Welcome back to the Stablecoin podcast. This is Luther and Rami. We're co-founders of Stablecoin Partners. Our guest today is Ghazi Ben Amor from Zama, the team behind the Zama protocol, which enables confidential stablecoin movement, private DeFi, and encrypted tokenization while keeping everything verifiable on public chains. Today's conversation is about confidentiality as a feature for stablecoins and RWAs. But before we get started, a quick disclaimer. The opinions expressed here are those of the hosts and the guests and do not represent the views of their employers or affiliated organizations. This conversation is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as legal, financial, or investment advice. With that, Ghazi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Luther. Hi, Rami.
Such pleasure having you. As we get started, Ghazi, I think a great place for us to start is you have a really interesting history in cybersecurity. How did that kind of move from the world that you started in and then you ended up in digital assets talking about confidentiality on public blockchains?
My engineering career started with smart cards. So, credit cards. It was a company based in France, but I quickly realized that payment was very interesting. It requires, to be on mobile phones. So I ended up going to Asia, worked on the first mobile payments, 20 years ago in Korea and in Singapore. Then decided to do an MBA. And so stayed on the tech side, did investments, did finance, was a CFO of a cybersecurity company, and I was always interested in the tech side of things. So not just the numbers, but also what goes with the numbers. And so when I heard about Zama, I was lucky enough to be introduced to the CEO and founder, Rand, and decided to take the adventure.
Amazing. Okay, before we dive in, everybody that has probably ever heard about blockchains in general, the first thing that everybody hears is this, right? Like everything is in the open. Anybody can see what's happening. You can look at it on the ledger. It's called a decentralized, ledger for the reason. And transparency has always been something that is a core value to blockchains in general. I think as of late, increasingly we're starting to see where privacy is important, but then there's privacy and there's confidentiality. I think there's a difference there. And I think let's start talking about that first, Ghazi, before we dive into the tech piece.
Yeah, so the terminologies privacy and confidentiality tend to be associated to privacy for individuals and confidentiality in general. So privacy is a subset of confidentiality. It's about my information, what I want the public to know about me. So I control what they see and I hide what I don't want them to see. Whereas confidentiality tends to take it to the next level where it's also businesses, a company that has information about their clients. It's privacy for their clients, but it's also competitive analysis for the rest of the industry. So confidentiality is about controlling the data that you have, not just because it's yours, but also because your competitors, regulators, etc., expect you to do certain things.
And how does the approach that Zama takes differ from what is existing today in the marketplace around Alio, which uses ZK proofs? The same thing with Canton. They have different approaches. One is permissioned and one is permissionless. But how does the Zama approach differ?
So firstly, maybe I'll talk about what fully homomorphic encryption, FHE, is about. As a technology, it allows a validator, a verifier, to compute on encrypted data without having to decrypt the data. So you mentioned transparency of public blockchains. The transparency comes from the fact that all the validators can execute the same smart contracts, reach the same output, and reach a consensus between themselves that the state of the chain is correct. We're enabling that with FHE in the sense that now validators can get encrypted inputs for the smart contracts, execute the smart contracts, reach the same encrypted outputs, and therefore reach a consensus. So the verifiability comes from the fact that all the validators execute the same steps and reach the same outcome. And we, with FHE, keep to the way it has been done. In ZK, it's slightly different. ZK the end user would run the computation and then would post a proof that he has computed things as per the smart contract. So the validators do not execute the smart contract. They just verify that my proof is correct, that my proof corresponds to the smart contract. And this has advantages and disadvantages. The advantage of ZK is that it can speed up things. So ZK, we see it as a scaling technology. Validators don't need to run all the computations. They can just verify the computation. Therefore, you can run faster. And this is that was a key achievement to speed up the blockchain. When it comes to privacy and confidentiality, there is a question mark on, I have all the data. I've only shared a proof that I've executed the smart contract. That's great. If I don't want to share, say, my nationality, I will just prove that I have the right nationality. But in many use cases, you need to have all the data to progress. For example, if the three of us wanted to know the average salary of the three of us, I need your data, you need my data, Rami needs, and so with ZK, someone has to see all the data, and that's what FHE allows. All the data can be put. Therefore, we can run compliance on all the data. So with FHE, the data is on chain. It's in an encrypted format, but is on chain. And I can run any algorithm on the encrypted data. When I say any validator, any observer can run the algorithms on the data and reach, an outcome, the same outcome, if you run the same computation.
If I'm drawing a parallel to traditional finance, if I said this is similar to a hash function, would I be understating or overstating the simplicity there?
So a hash function does not allow you to compute. It's just
okay.
So you can compare two things with hash, but you're not able to run executions on what you're comparing. No, there isn't something close to FHE. It's a relatively new technology, right? It has been invented 15 years ago. We've been perfecting it for the past 5 years. There is nothing really similar to it yet.
That's amazing.
I had a question, Ghazi. In terms of with the advances of quantum computing, the safety net is that the data's on chain, but it's encrypted in a format that only the people who have the capabilities to extract the information decrypt, and then they have access to the information on a permissioned basis generally. That'll be the way that it works now. How solid is that when you take into account bad actors, quantum computing, the ability to decrypt when it's not, because it's out there. It's out there, but it's protected under the encryption. But it's only as protected as the person who can break it. So, how do you develop that? Is there any other layer of safety that can be built in, or how do you protect against this evolution in processing capability that can be held by bad actors?
Yeah, so there are two dimensions to the answer. The first one is the solidity of the encryption. So you mentioned quantum computer. The FHE is post-quantum resistant. So the starting point of post-quantum algorithms, so encryption algorithms that can resist, quantum computers' attacks, is learning with errors. So there are 2-3 problems that have been selected by NIST. NIST is the cybersecurity body in the US. We happen to be one of the 3. And therefore, we are post-quantum. So even when quantum computers will come, they will not have an advantage breaking the encryption. So that's one part. The algorithms are safe and, at the highest level of security. The second part is in financial institutions, you have layers of cybersecurity. So you rarely end up putting the data in public. And this is more of a historical way of doing things. And this is why institutions are not necessarily comfortable going to public blockchains. So what we've seen, for example, in a pilot with Kinexys, JP Morgan, was they were thinking about a shared blockchain. So it's not a public blockchain, it's shared across 10 banks. And that allows the banks to verify each other without any of the bank knowing what the other bank is doing. It's not public blockchain, so unfortunately, I would have preferred a public setting, but it's as close as you can get, which is to permission the access to the encrypted data.
Yeah, a permission shared ledger, effectively, across 10 institutions. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
How does that work on a public blockchain from that? Like, how do you see actors? Because the key thing to kind of remember here is that Zama protocol is not a layer 1 or layer 2. It's almost a cross-chain or interoperability protocol from that perspective. Maybe you can walk us through a typical transaction between two institutions. And I think I want to walk through that because I think that sets up the right way for the listeners to kind of visualize how this actually works.
Yeah, so as you said, we can integrate into any public blockchain. So that's truly the advantage that we have over many other solutions. We can go where the liquidity and the use cases are. And the way we do it is we deploy a library on that chain that would extend the capabilities of the chain. So the validators are still the same validators. They're running smart contracts that have been written in the same language, Solidity in the case of EVMs. But you're able to import our library, and that would give you new data types, encrypted data types, and new functions to manipulate encrypted data types. Now, what happens in the background is when you try to do a computation on FHE, the host chain will notify the Zama protocol chain that computation is needed, and the Zama chain will compute it on behalf of the host chain. It's all public. Since we're talking about FHE, it's all public, so you can see all the requests. You can recompute all the requests, but we do the computation not on the host chain, but on the Zama protocol chain. For a reason is to allow a scalability, so that we can put more powerful computers, ASICs, GPUs on our chain to run faster. And two, it stays backward compatible because, as you know, when you work with financial institutions, they've already invested a certain amount of effort and testing on their smart contracts. They don't want to break everything and learn a new language. So they can just extend the functions that need confidentiality and nothing else. Now, the Zama protocol itself is a permissioned for now chain that is only running the computation and the decryption requests. It's powered by the who's who of the Web3, so Open Zeppelin, Ledger, Fireblocks, etc. They're each running a node. Because it was permissioned, we decided to go for the big guns, those that know how to do it in a secure way and have the credibility to protect their reputation. And just to clarify, none of them have access to the data. They're just running FHE. So it's not like we gave them special permissions.
Yeah, no, that would definitely defeat the purpose of the confidentiality for sure. No, I'm glad you clarified that. I'm going to walk through this and then just let me know if I'm on the right track, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm on Ethereum, Rami's on Solana. I'm about to send, a $10 million transaction for some treasury management or something like that on the back end. And the cross-chain piece, so when it comes to the data that's actually exchanged for the transaction to actually happen, the actual data and the confidentiality or the computation of that is actually happening on the Zama protocol that's in between the two public blockchains, and that part is permissioned. Is that the right way to say it?
Maybe I'll walk you first from Ethereum to Ethereum. So let's assume Both
Awesome.
of you are on Ethereum. In a normal stablecoin transaction, you have a smart contract. You will call the smart contract with the address of Rami and with the amount 10 million.
Yep.
What the smart contract will do is that it will check that you have more than 10 million in your balance, will subtract it from your balance and add it to Rami, all in an atomic way. So that now Rami has an extra 10 million. If you do that in a confidential way, same thing, you will call the confidential stablecoin with a confidential encrypted 10 million. So you take 10 million, you encrypt them on your machine. It's on your laptop or on your phone, and you call the smart contract with the encrypted 10 million. What happens is then validators will compare your encrypted balance to the encrypted 10 million. They will get a Boolean, it's maybe you have sufficient, maybe you don't. They don't know because they don't know any of the two numbers. And so what they'll do is they'll assume that if you have sufficient fund, they'll send that amount. So you'll send the 10 million. And if you don't have sufficient funds, they'll send zero. Because they don't have visibility on your balance. They don't have visibility on the amount. They still need to do a transaction. So that's what happens on Ethereum is the encrypted balance of Rami is incremented by 10 million. And your encrypted balance is reduced by 10 million. And that's it. So we mirror what happens on ERC20, except that the amounts, transferred amounts and the balances are encrypted. Now, if you want to do it, the next step, which is you want to send on, to a smart contract that is on Solana and not on Ethereum, it's the same mirroring that happens with, cross-chain. In a regular setting, the 10 million will be an information that will be sent by a cross-chain messenger, typically layer 0 or Chainlink. And there is consensus that this is what you have sent when it reaches Solana. So the bridge is enabling or is ensuring that the 10 million that you transferred on Ethereum are the same as the 10 million that are reaching Solana. But then it's the same, the same message that happens on the other side. There are techniques that I'm not going into.
Sure.
Now, take the cross-chain bridges, replace 10 million with encrypted 10 million, and now you have confidential cross-chain transfers. So the beauty of our technology is that it really copy-paste what has already been done in the non-confidential world. It just replaces the amounts and the balances with confidential amounts and balances. Everything else is the same. So bridges would work. No, we're working with layer 0 to enable cross-chain tokens with confidentiality. Custody solutions would work. So you're able to, you get the same events to notify the tool that you have received a transfer. Transfers work the same way. You call a smart contract, not with a non-encrypted data, but with a confidential one. But that's so everything is fairly easy to integrate, and that's really the beauty of our solution. Is the ease of integration comes from the fact that we are in the same ecosystem of events, smart contracts, and coding languages.
So really, then the confidentiality is not constrained by the customer journey. Then it's actually maintained across the whole ecosystem. So it's the current workflows don't need to change in order to become confidential now. It can be incorporated.
They need to be adjusted so that they take inputs as non-confidential and confidential, but the lift is very small, compared to you need to write a totally different smart contract on another language, or you need to adopt a new technology, like, some of what privacy protocols try to achieve.
Yeah, or migrate to a whole new chain, right? Like an Alio or a Canton, which you can stay on Ethereum. You have confidentiality now without changing without changing your programming, right? Your programmers don't have to learn a whole new language, as you said, right? I think that there's a lot of value to that. I'm going to ask a quick question, and Rami, I'll get back to you because I think you were about to ask something. You mentioned this concept of confidential stablecoins. Like, is this a regular USDC and USDT that we all know, or is this how are you when you address that? I want to be very clear. Is there any change to the asset that people are using?
You read my mind. That was my question, actually. So perfect.
So there are two ways to think about confidentiality. One is, an extension, what we call a wrapper. So you take any existing token, it could be stablecoin, it could be utility token, or, and you create a wrapper. What is a wrapper? Is basically, it's a smart contract. You transfer 10 USDT, it will take them and it will mint 10 confidential USDT and transfer them to you. So now you have confidential USDT. The underlying asset is USDT, and therefore, it comes with what, the proof of reserves, etc., that Tether has. You know that your 20 confidential USDT, at any time, you can call the wrapper to unshield them and then use them to off-ramp them, for example, with Tether, or to use them on DeFi protocols. What we're working on is making sure that you don't need to do that, right? So if you receive your salary in confidential USDCs or USDT, you don't have to unshield them. You can go to an on-ramp, off-ramp partner. So we're lining them up. And you give them 20 confidential USDT and they wire $20 to your account, or they hand you $20 in a way. So that's, if you like, is the evolution. You take an existing token, you wrap it, you shield it. And the underlying asset is therefore as stable as the wrapper, and therefore you don't take any risk. The other approach, is to create natively confidential tokens. So there is the issuer that will mint tokens directly in a confidential way. The advantage is that, often the on-ramping is off-chain. So, you get, Tether gets $10,000 and it will mint 10,000 USDT. So now it will mint 10,000 confidential USDT. And the 10,000 is a confidential number. So no one knows what has actually been minted. Both approaches are possible. The advantage of the second one is in cases of RWA. We have a big partnership that will be announced soon, where because the amounts coming in and out of the blockchain are very sensitive, they wanted to go with natively confidential stablecoins as opposed to wrapped stablecoins.
The question I had here is then, are you working with issuers who are issuing native confidential stablecoins, or is it the existing stablecoin issuers, the Circles and the Tethers and so on, and you're asking them to create a natively confidential stablecoin version of USDC or USDT using your technology? What is the pathway? I'm just trying to understand, if someone wants to natively issue a confidential stablecoin and they're an existing stablecoin issuer, what do they do? How do they do it? Or is it new entrants into the market saying that we are issuing now a confidential stablecoin and backing it in the normal way like other stablecoins? Can you explain this for us?
So the truth is, anyone can adopt confidential tokens, the existing ones and the existing issuers and the new issuers. On the new issuers, you may know TGBP. It's the tokenized pound. So they adopted our technology fairly early on, and so they have currently a wrapped TGBP, but they also have native confidential TGBP that would then allow to pay salaries in pounds. So they are, in a way, a new entrant because they don't have the same scale as, Circle or Tether. But if you think about the currencies that they're covering, it's also a fairly, blue market, right? No one is competing there. When it comes to established issuers, they're working with us on specific use cases. So it's not always confidential stablecoins for the public, but for, say, RWA use cases where you layer on top of it permissioned stablecoins. So you need to know who has, who is allowed to take the token. So there are different compliance rules that exist today. So it's not, and they want to add confidentiality on top. For the rest, today we're only working with wrappers. So so the confidential USDT, for example, is not issued by Tether, but by Zama. We hope that eventually they'll take it on, but as of now, it is issued by the Zama protocol so that we enable confidentiality, confidential payments with USDT.
Thank you. That's very clear.
So any token or asset you're saying can be, I want to make up a word here, and anybody who's an English major, please don't crucify me on this, but confidentialized, right, from that perspective. So you can make it confidential from that perspective, which is fascinating. And you're looking for issuers to ultimately natively issue confidential tokens. And I think the aspect of stablecoins, utility tokens, or RWA tokens to be made confidential from that perspective, I think is powerful. Can we go back to the transaction piece of this, because there is a huge value add by having the fact that this is still verifiable, and what is the verifiability that this brings in? So if I were a regulator, or somebody who's looking at like maybe a BSA policy at the bank, how do I view this and say, oh my God, this is exactly what we were looking for, which didn't exist in traditional, or what we call traditional blockchain transactions?
Yeah, so verifiability ultimately in the stablecoin setting is, all the stablecoins you got in minus all the stablecoins you got out are equal to your balance, right? So
Right.
that's what verifiability is. And in that context, you do the same, except that all the amounts are confidential. You touched on the point of compliance, maybe, which is slightly different from verifiability. So there are multiple levels of compliance. There is the compliance on the proof of reserve, right? So you need to prove that the reserve in fiat is equal. So that's possible because the issuer, if you take a regular stablecoin contract, it has a function to display get the balance. So it's balance of all the stablecoins. The same exists with confidential stablecoins. So you're able to call the function and get the balance of confidential tokens, but only the issuer is able, or the auditor of the issuer is able to decrypt it and to compare it with the reserve of fiat, and say, okay, they are compliant. There is a second element of compliance, which is, sanctioned addresses. So if I compare solutions, for example, in ZK, you don't see the addresses of the senders and receivers. You only have a proof that the balances have been updated, but you don't know who initiated and who received actions. So the compliance there is slightly more complicated. There are different approaches, but ultimately they end up sharing all the data with someone to be able to check that no one has breached, the rules of not dealing with sanctioned addresses. In our case, because we're only encrypted the amounts, it's straightforward. If I have been dealing with a sanctioned address, it appears on my social graph. And therefore, it adds, certainty to the regulators that what I'm reporting is actually what is happening. And they can then go to the issuer and say, we believe that this address is a sanctioned address. How come you're still letting them operate with your confidential stablecoin? right? So the ability of regulators to confirm that the compliance on sanctioned address is executed without any recourse, it's on the public blockchain, is a big plus on the compliance side.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. There is a analogy that you guys use in your, I think it's in the light paper, which I loved, right? There was, when we first started using the internet, we all used HTTP, and then there's HTTPS, which added security. And essentially, this is what Zama is doing, is adding the same way that internet traffic was made more secure, you're securing on-chain traffic from that perspective. And I love that analogy. What is the inbound that you're seeing? Is it mostly institutional inbound that are looking to add this functionality, add Zama to their daily operations?
So we have three categories or three types of use cases. RWA, so any of the RWA players trying to move on public blockchains have inherited the confidentiality and privacy requirements of and they want to see that on public blockchain. The second is corporate payments. So retail for some reason hasn't been as big for now, probably because people don't realize that everything they do is public. Unfortunately, and two, many of the players don't realize that there are solutions out there that can solve the problem. On the corporate side, however, it's very clear when you do cross-border payments or when you do payroll, you want to make sure that the data is confidential. Otherwise, we talked, there was an interesting pain point with one of our clients. They were paying salaries with stablecoins. Blockchain is pseudonymous, so it's not anonymous, but you could still, so you don't know who is getting what, but you can see the amounts, and so you can compare your salary to the salary of your colleagues. You don't know who is getting what, but you know whether you're in the top tier or in the bottom tier, and just that created a lot of problems. Another good example is, when you look into RWA, dividend payments today is often not done on chain because some geographies have different taxations, and you would give up, what bracket of taxation. Sometimes you give up some private information, a tax changes means that you got a new job, or you see, so all that private information is a problem today. And so most of the, RWA tokenization life cycle, when it comes to payments of dividends, interest, etc., they prefer to do it in fiat because of the disclosure of information when you do it on public blockchain. So I mentioned RWA, I mentioned corporate payments. The third is DeFi use cases for trading and yield for large holders. And it has more to do with today the signaling. So if a venture capital or a foundation exit a position, it's all public information. It could create some negative press in the community. And I mean, if you think about it, a VC, his job is to enter and exit projects, so it shouldn't be negative. But now it's a lot harder for such projects to be dealt with if confidentiality is not added to the trading.
This is a question for yourself and maybe even for Rami, who comes from more on the trading side. In traditional markets, you've got this concept of dark pool trading, right? Like, stocks are bought and sold in the millions, but it's done in such a way that it doesn't fluctuate the market per se. We've seen the headlines that Michael Saylor or somebody is buying another 10 million worth of Bitcoin or 10 billion worth of Bitcoin, depending on what's happening there. But that was transparent, and we all, I think, enjoyed a level of transparency from that perspective. Do you see dark pool trading and similar kind of concepts entering the on-chain space now with the introduction of confidentiality?
So they've already entered the space. If you are on a centralized exchange, you don't see the transactions, and so a lot of transactions happen off chain today. Now we expect regulators to step in at one point, because you mentioned dark pools. Dark pools are regulated, so though the trading happens privately and the settlement happens privately, I think in T+2 or T+3, the dark pool has to publicize the position. So and same thing, the trading prices are also regulated. So it is already here. It's just it's off chain. And in my opinion, it will continue, and if anything, it will increase, and it will get regulated to avoid market abuse.
Thank you for that. Without getting too technical, one of the things that fascinated me when I was reading the light paper is that while fully homomorphic encryption, FHE, is the core technology, Zama protocol also leverages like multi-party computation and ZK proofs, right? The thing that we were saying, from that perspective. Can you kind of just walk us through at a high level, right? How those three things kind of interplay? FHE, MPC, multi-party computation, and zero-knowledge proofs or ZK proofs?
Yeah, so if we take a data flow, so I'm also going to send 10 million to Rami. He's going to be rich.
He's going to be super rich, at the end of this call.
Just in time. Thank you, guys.
The first step is I need to encrypt the 10 million, right? So I go on my browser. My browser has an FHE library that is on the front end, and it will basically encrypt the 10 million. Now I need to send the 10 million to the smart contract, but I first need to prove that I'm the one who did the encryption. Why? Because if you have encrypted some data that I take as encrypted and I submit it on your behalf, it's still valid data. It's just that now I'm submitting something that I shouldn't know. So I'm adding a zero knowledge proof to prove that I know the clear data. I'm not publicizing clear data, but I know, the clear data, and therefore the encryption has been done by me and not by someone else. So that's what ZK is about, is just to prove that I've done the encryptions. Now I send the data. The FHE interplays into checking my balance against the encrypted 10 million, updating my balance, and updating Rami's balance. Now, Rami gets an event that he got a confidential amount, and he gets excited. He wants to know how much he got. He needs to decrypt. So the way decryption works is through MPC. So Rami will call the protocol and say, I would like to decrypt my balance. Each node in the protocol will check, does Rami have the right to decrypt that number? And the way it works is there is an access control list. So, the list of who can decrypt what is on Ethereum. So they'll go on Ethereum, they'll check, okay, Rami indeed has a right to decrypt his balance. And then each node will do a partial decryption. Partial re-encryption, to be more specific. So they will take the encrypted data and re-encrypt it to the key of Rami. Each of them will do a partial re-encryption. We send all these to Rami. Rami aggregates all these partial re-encryption. He's able to get a data that is encrypted with his key, and then he's able to do the decryption. Why MPC? Is because if we don't do partial re-encryption, but full re-encryption, then now one node can potentially get Rami's balance. Whereas when you split the decryption across 13 nodes, none of them has seen Rami's balance. And because we do a re-encryption as opposed to a decryption, anyone who can intercept the encrypted data will not be able to see it after aggregation because they still need to have Rami's decryption key. And so this is where, and then obviously Rami now knows that he got 10 million.
And I'm a very happy man. further better of it.
Man,
And
you're
the
20 million
process is
rich.
good.
Yeah, you're
20 million rich. We should be doing more of these podcasts, I think, actually. Ghazi should be on more often. No, but it's fascinating because actually that was going to be part of my question, because historically there's been a lot of criticism of smart contracts being a vector for attack. A single point of failure, people attack the smart contract, and that's where numerous hacks have happened. The large DeFi failures have generally been because someone has attacked a vulnerability in the smart contract, and that's led to the single point of failure. So here, going through that journey, it looks like because it's being split amongst a number of different sub-tasks and no one has got the full picture, that hopefully mitigates the risk of any kind of single point of single vector of attack from a bad actor. Is that the right way to understand it?
Yes, so the technologies get you so far in terms of security. So obviously you need to choose the right technologies, and we believe we did. But on top of it, you still need to do source code audit. So we brought, we're, Open Zeppelin, Trade of Bits. We have made sure that our technology, our source code has been scrutinized with a large number of security auditors, and it's open source. So anyone can see the code and can check whether we've made a mistake. So yes, the technology secures things, but you still need to have auditors to make sure that you haven't done, a fool's mistake. A token, I'm supposed to send it to Rami, I send it to Luther because I made a mistake in the smart contract. So that kind of things, unfortunately, the technology alone cannot prevent, such mistakes.
Yeah. If it's 10 million, please feel free to make those
we'll
mistakes.
Make a mistake more often. Yeah, absolutely. But that sort of the finality of blockchain, the finality of payments, sometimes presents itself a problem, because in this sort of manual error where the money was sent to Luther rather than myself by mistake, what's the recourse for that? It's gone at that point, which then makes it difficult in a financial services constraint to redeem the money, get it back. If someone sends a SWIFT, for example, and there's you can do a recall, there's a number of ways to get that money back. I'm talking about potentially institutional adoption of this workflow. Is there a way that you've been thinking about how to resolve that that problem statement, actually, if someone mistakenly sends something to someone else?
Yeah, so it's not a confidentiality problem. First, it's you can have it with regular stablecoins, and you mentioned Swift. You're right and wrong at the same time, because if I get the 10 million and I withdraw them in an ATM, then no one has recourse anymore, right? Like you cannot get them back, and thus, if you like, what is different, between traditional finance and stablecoins is the speed at which things happen. If you are a hacker, you get the 10 million, wire them to another address or withdraw them, and then it's just very difficult, if not impossible, to go back. Now, having said that, when you go into RWA tokens, you have in many ERCs have implemented the ability to get reimbursed because they assume that mistakes could happen. This is happening between permissioned entities, so there is a level of trust. We're not talking about someone hacking or etc. It's like banks talking to each other, and a bank telling the other, "Hey, we wired $1 million extra. Can you send it back?" So in RWA, it's possible. It's not possible because of confidentiality or because of the protocol or the blockchain. It's possible because of the smart contract itself. And so the same way you write a smart contract that allows you to fall back, if you made a mistake, you could imagine doing the same on stablecoins. Having said that, currently the way stablecoins are written does not allow to do it. So once you transfer, you transfer.
Yeah, that's true. And I think just to sort of add maybe a clarity point, just from my GMO days, it's a regulatory requirement for many stablecoins to have freeze and seize capabilities. So once it's transferred potentially to the wrong place, at least you can freeze, seize, regulatory scrutiny can happen on those things. But it doesn't solve the ultimate problem. If someone sends it to the wrong place, you don't get it back. But certainly from a compliance perspective, there is visibility from the stablecoin issuer. They are able to at least, if a bad actor does do something, you are able to freeze and seize your token in a wallet. Yeah.
And that's something that we implement as well, right? Because ultimately it's a smart contract. The freeze is just lines of codes that say if the account is frozen, then don't do transfers. And the same code is actually written on with confidential transfers.
No, that makes sense.
I noticed on the roadmap that Solana is coming in the second half of 2026. And so with Ethereum, and I'm guessing all EVM compatible chains is included when you say Ethereum. Is that safe to assume?
So today we're just on Ethereum. We are launching on Polygon in next quarter. So
Nice.
it's going to be the second chain that we launch. And from then on, we hope to get most of the major EVMs. We're just prioritizing, it's unfortunately, the engineers cannot scale as fast as we want them to, but we will nail most of the major EVMs between this year and next year. Solana is the same architecture, so that's what is good about our technology is that we can apply it on all blockchain, but it's still a different environment, different coding language, and so we're taking our time to make sure that we nail it.
As we're starting to wrap up, Ghazi, we're actually at a really interesting milestone, right? Like we crossed, I think, the 26 billion mark when it comes to RWA globally. And you touched base on this, which is it's not just the confidentiality surrounding the payments around the stablecoins, but it's actually the RWA tokens or the RWA assets themselves being issued with confidentiality built in. Can you just kind of maybe elaborate a little bit more on some of the use cases that are coming to you guys today from that perspective at a high level, right? Is it more the institutional side? Is it more funds, et cetera, that are trying to issue assets? And is it tied to the yield component that you talked about?
So there are a few things. So for RWA, what blockchain enables is secondary trading and lending at scale. So today, if you have a 401k, you cannot do anything with it, though it has value, and maybe you need to borrow some money. And the best way to do it is to have an integral way of putting it whatever net worth you have as collateral and getting. So this is something that DeFi has aced. The collateralized lending is extremely efficient in DeFi and extremely inefficient in TradFi because every financial institution has its own rules, has its own. There isn't a single way of doing it, and the same with secondary trading, because you ultimately don't really own, for example, the shares of an LP. You own them through a distributor. And if you want to sell them to someone who is not who is not using the same distributor, then it breaks. And so many of the financial institutions are working to solve this secondary trading and, lending at the level of the fund so that the distributors are able to benefit from these rails of trading and these rails of lending, and can have all their end users benefit, all their investors benefit from them. So that's on the RWA. The use case that is really lending and secondary trading. That's why financial institutions are moving to blockchain, and obviously confidentiality solves some of the problems like interest rates, etc. On the corporate payment, I would say the yield is also an important one. So right now, if you think about cross-border payments, you wire $5 million to an Indonesian supplier. The supplier doesn't have a way to hold the dollar, and so he converts them right away into the local currency. But then he may need 3 days later to wire $4 million to his own supplier. And so it's fairly inefficient because he would have paid the FX twice. It's better to keep them as stable coins, and it's better for him to so that he saves on the FX rates. But also it's more efficient for him to place them, to invest them for 3 days in a tokenized MMF and get some money out of these before the next payment. So this is where blockchain is really unlocking many of these cases where there was a lot of friction with the current system. And again, we believe that without confidentiality, many of these use cases will just be POCs waiting for adoption because of the lack of privacy.
Where can people find you, Ghazi?
So Zama.org is where our website, but you can ping me anywhere on LinkedIn or others. We're quite active in events, and we enjoy conversations.
What is a typical, what is the right inbound for you though? Is it a financial institution? Like if you wanted somebody to listen to this and say, I need to contact Ghazi right now, who would that person be?
So if you are already in the blockchain space, whether you DeFi, RWA, etc., and you need confidentiality, either you need it or your clients need it, it's very easy to start working with us. As I said, the technical lift is so little that we have, fairly large institutions that have done it all without contacting us. And then we met them and said, oh, we did this and that. And like, why didn't you tell us? Like, because the project was confidential. And so it's really simple. It's people don't realize how easy. That's why I said Zama.org. You go there, you discover, and you're like, oh, actually, it's only a few lines of code.
Got it. Yeah. It's like a spy program, like, why didn't you tell me? And you're like, because we're spies. We're,
the project was encrypted. That's the issue.
We don't have any information about our clients, right?
That's fair. I mean, I guess that's the best test is when you yourself don't know anything about your clients, right? I mean,
at least for a POC. I mean, I'm sure that if they go into production, there would be more discussions, obviously.
Yes, of course. So we're just joking. I think that's really funny, actually. But no, that's actually very interesting, I think, from that perspective. And so, and we see this, right? Like, I mean, we've had payroll providers, we've had cross-border money movers, people that are moving billions, and so, yeah, absolutely. And I think all those use cases are really, really key when it comes to confidentiality. And I think we are at an inflection point. I truly believe we're at an inflection point where no longer this talk track around transparency and you can see everything, that just doesn't work anymore. And I think where we are with institutional adoption, what you're saying is absolutely what we need, which is the privacy and the confidentiality, but with the verifiability that is needed for a regulator to feel like this is not another Tornado Cash, right? From that perspective.
No, exactly.
So just to kind of wrap up, if you're building stablecoins or RWA infrastructure, this episode should make it clear that confidentiality and compliance are converging problems, and that simply putting everything on a transparent chain won't scale to serious enterprise use cases. Please make sure you like and subscribe for the latest episodes, and if you found value, share this with a colleague working in stablecoins, RWAs, or digital treasury who needs to understand where confidential on-chain finance is heading. Thank you so much, Ghazi. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ghazi.